What's good, everybody? Time for a DL short. So, I came across a video. Michael Sartain had a conversation with Cynthia L. Elliott. Now, I don't know who she is. Um, it's the first time I ever came across this particular woman. Appears to be older, successful, like has been in the corporate world. Uh, and I don't think she has any kids. Very much old school feminist. Patriarchy is the reason everything is messed up, right? She decided to have a conversation with Michael Sartain. So Michael Sartain is all about data, extremely data driven, and he's out to help men. She wants to go out and help men and women. They're both out to help men and women in today's sexual marketplace. So they had a conversation. So what we're about to watch is a clip. It's about 16 minutes. I don't know if we'll get through the whole thing. We might. We're definitely going to cover the entire conversation. It's about an hour 15 long. We're going to do this tomorrow, guys. So if you're watching this in the future, go back and look in the lives because I'm gonna react to it on a live stream so I can get the chat involved because it's fire. Michael Sartain gave a master class in how to have the conversation about what's going on in today's sexual marketplace without letting it devolve into, is men bad, women bad, it's your fault, screaming, going off onto all tangents. He managed to keep the conversation where it needed to be. Excellent job. Shout out to brother Michael. So let's get into this, guys. Now, in this particular segment, he's going to be talking about the surprising truth about women's expectations in relationships. Now, in the red pill world, in the Mano Swamp, guys are talking about this all the time. It is definitely an issue, and it always boils down to um, hypergamy and women wanting to get the best men that are available. It is what it is. Even men who aren't available, they want to get the best. I don't have a problem with hypergamy, and for those dudes out there who got a problem with it, all I can say to you is do the work, become a better guy, become the best version of yourself, and you won't have a problem with it either. So, especially if you get your game up. So let's check this out. I'd like to keep the DL shorts short, but this one might run just a little bit long. But I definitely just wanted to get in here and get the conversation going. So let's check this out.
So what I said, I didn't say that they got the guys that were 6 feet tall and made $100,000 a year because, to your point, you're exactly right. It's only 2.3% of men. What happens though is because they end up with a guy who makes $70,000 a year and 5'9", they feel like they settled, but they didn't. If you were to look across the stratification, what's called assortative mating, they were a 6 and they ended up with a guy who was a 6, but because of the attention they got from men, they believed they were an 8 and were dating a guy who's a 5, and that wasn't actually what was going on. Blood.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I'm just happy to hear, I've been kind of bitching for a long time about wanting to see more men step up for men in a more open and powerful way. And that didn't exist for a lot of years, or if it did, it was really kind of hidden. And men didn't really talk about their emotional or mental or goals, things like that. Just it was a very closed sort of world in that regard. And so it's awesome to see men really stepping up to help other men evolve and grow. Before we got filming, I brought up the fact that I feel like the reason why, and the difference between us is he's very data based, and because I've grown up with a lot of data that's like the food pyramid that turned out to be bullshit. I'm not that data based. I'm very much intuitive based because my intuition has proven me right time and time again. My observation is that men marry for a mommy 2.0 who cleans the house, cooks, takes care of the kids, takes care of their emotional, mental labor in the household, and then frequently, often has to put up with the fact that they get cheated on because that happens a lot. And then expected these days to make half the money, and women have finally had it. And I think that's the reason why they're not getting married as much anymore. And or are they having kids, which has a lot to do with the economy, let's be honest. But that
So everything she said right there really had nothing to do with what Mike was saying. But the one thing that I keyed on when I watched this the first time, she's like, I don't believe in data. because I grew up with the food pyramid, and that was all wrong. And I only believe in what I feel is right because my intuition has never let me down. Right off rip, you're not going to be able to have a real conversation. Is really going to delve into the issues if you're dealing with someone that doesn't believe in science, right? It's kind of like talking to a flat earther. I don't talk to him. It is a waste of time. You believe the earth is flat. It's 2024. I'm not even going to waste my time talking to you. Excuse me. That's how that goes down. But Brother Michael Sartain stayed in there. You want to talk about staying in the trenches, staying on mission. Shout out to the Air Force because he hung in there and he got all of his points across. And guess what? I'm going to say 95% of the things that he was saying, all the data-driven data points, she agreed with. Crazy, huh? Let's continue.
The divorce rate is so incredibly high, especially when you look at post closures. The divorce rate went through the roof. And Michael, you had some strong thoughts about that. What are your
like
thoughts?
I said before, when it comes to divorce rate, women are leaving men often. It's Scott Galloway, who's a very politically progressive guy. He's a liberal who comes out and he says nobody wants to date with broke men. And so, Cynthia, one of the things I wanted to establish at the beginning of this is when you talk about men, you're not talking about all men. There are two clear different species of men. There's the species of men that's the 6'5", blue eyes, works in finance that women are seeking. And those men, because they have so many more options with women, they're very hard to get them to settle down. Dr. David Buss talks about in situations where there's more women seeking men, those men are going to choose short-term strategies. And often those women are going to become frustrated because they're trying to lock down a guy that several other women want. Then there's the other 85% of men who don't have anywhere near the same level of access to women, and specifically the bottom third of men who have absolutely none. And whenever we talk about men not stepping up or men not being vulnerable, when those men are vulnerable, these women do not care. If a guy you were not attracted to came up and bought you flowers, you're not going to become attracted to him because he bought you flowers. When women say they want a man to buy them flowers, what they mean is they want a man they're attracted to buy them flowers. When women say, I want a man who to be vulnerable with me, what they want is a man who they're attracted to be vulnerable to them. Because if a homeless person came up to you and started saying, hey, I just want to let you know I'm going through some shit, bought you flowers, you're not going to go home and sleep with him just because he was vulnerable with you and because he bought you flowers. And it's a very confusing message for men. And the other thing is, where I'm going to take umbrage with what you're saying before, the guidelines for men, what I'm saying is actors that are men dressing in drag, Machine Gun Kelly wearing a pink dress, and Tekashi 6ix9ine going around and snitching to the feds. These are the examples that men have today. I think men are more than sensitive and vulnerable enough to make up, like in comparison to men from the generation of World War II to now, the idea that these men aren't sensitive enough is ridiculous.
Of course, I didn't say sensitive. I said emotionally and mentally mature.
Yeah, I didn't say sensitive. I said emotionally and mentally mature. Right. And then in the full length video, because this is just a preview, guys, and we're going to break down the entire conversation tomorrow on live. We're going to do it live. It's going to be a long show, but it's going to be fun. Right. I've listening to this lady talk and watching her try to move the goalposts, watching her, start an argument and then begin to argue against her own point. It blew my mind. And in these spaces, when men and women had this conversation, once the dude sees that the opponent, in this case the woman, is dancing all around, moving the goalposts, she's debunking her own points, the guy goes in for the kill and he's like, yeah, I won. And it's like, all right, cool. But what you did was just let it devolve into a fight. The woman or the other person gets upset and they rage quit or they go away or they stop participating. No one wins in that case. But what Brother Michael did was he stood in there. He stayed on message. Wherever she took the conversation, he went there, but only after finishing the thought. And the data was amazing. And when we watch this whole thing later, you're going to see her just be mesmerized by the data. And you can't run away from the science, bottom line. But what he was saying about dudes being weak and sensitive and all that, it's true. Dudes today are extremely weak, right? Dudes today are raised by the feminine and they come off feminine. And I think it's dangerous. Scott Galloway says it's dangerous. I agree with that. Lonely, sexless men are the most dangerous thing we have in America right now. and no one seems to care, people are going to begin to care. It is what it is. But let's continue.
Emotionally or mentally
Huge
mature.
difference.
The issue is like you said before, women, because of parental investment hypothesis, like I mentioned before, Robert Trivers came up with this idea in the 1970s, an evolutionary psychologist, which is in any two gender species, the gender that has more parental investment in Homo sapiens, it's going to be females. They're going to be the more selective of the two genders. And then the gender that has the smaller sex cell, which would be men and their sperm, they're going to be more competitive with one another for access to females. And we see this. It's a falsifiable hypothesis that's never been falsified. In every single two gender species, we've seen this to be the case. And so as a result, women are more selective than men. And as a result, women should, if you were to hypothesize, should ask for divorce more than men do. And we see that about 80% of divorces are initiated by women. I just had dinner 4 nights ago with the most prominent divorce attorney in the United States, James Sexton from Manhattan. And he was explaining to me, he was like, every time we have a couple and the man has any sort of proclivity to lose his job or lose his money, immediately the woman comes and says, I would like to get half. I want to initiate this divorce as quickly as possible.
I find that very, very hard to believe because of the number, in my lifetime, the number of women that I've seen who supported the relationship, not only financially, but emotionally, mentally, and usually didn't file for divorce until after trying a ton of other things. I just have to go back and say one thing. I know maybe 3 women in my 40-something years as a relatively aware person on the planet that were genuinely attracted to 6'5" men with blonde hair and worked in finance. There's so few of those on the planet. I find it hard to believe that the statistics actually.
No, but I think they would find those men attractive. They just don't exist. Like
that would know me. That was one of my goals.
But Cynthia, Cynthia, I'll have a room of like not 10 girls in a room, and I'll ask them.
How old are they? What type of guy? Can I ask you that?
So somewhere between. Usually, I have some occasional woman in their late 40s, and then a couple of them in like the early 20s, somewhere in that area. And I always look through the 3 M's. I look for mothers. I look for master's degrees, and I look for mothers. What was the third one? Mothers, master's degrees, and married. Those are the 3 things I look for because I want a separation of like different type of socioeconomic groups. And when I ask the questions, the answers are always the same. What kind of man do you want? How tall does he need to be? 6 feet tall. Well, 6 feet tall puts him in the top 17%, or I'm sorry, the top 14% of the population. Then he needs to make $100,000 a year. Well, $100,000 a year puts him in the top 17%. So 17% times 14% is 2.3% of the population. When you get to 6,
don't you believe that a lot of that has to do with the fact that historically, and it's built into our DNA at this point, women were couldn't have. I mean, I was a kid when bank accounts were allowed put with by women. I was a teen, almost a young adult when we were allowed to get business loans without having a man sign for them. So it's still built into our DNA that our safe.
So she's in this conversation with the guy. She's like, man, this dude knows his stuff. He has the data to back it up. So she'll say, I don't believe that women in large numbers are leaving their husbands because of what you just stated, because of the 500 people I met in my life, or 1,000 people, or whatever it is. That I've never seen that happen. It's like, it's a big country. It's a big country. What is it? 400 million people just in America. I think it is half of that, more than half of that are women. Right. And when you can easily pull the divorce stats from most states and look at it. You can easily pull the transcripts from the trial, and it's right there. All you got to do is look at the declarations, right? All you got to do is look at it, right? It states right there what they want, why they want it, and it's right there. So you can't argue the data. She doesn't want to talk about the data. She wants to talk about how she feels. Why? Because her intuition has never led her wrong, right? Let's continue.
Our safety, our financial security, the ability for our children to be taken care of, and for us to be able to have a roof over our head was almost entirely dependent on men.
Nothing to do with what we're talking
have
about.
A little bit to do with that? Is it said as though it's a condemnation of women?
It's not a condemnation, but it's evolutionary psychology. So they did specific studies issuing concerning exactly the point that you brought up. So they go to more egalitarian nations. Like, for instance, Norway is probably the most egalitarian nation on the planet, where women make more money than men, often in some cases. And in those places, what the women want is not for men to be 50-50. They choose for men to make 60% more than that. When Rihanna was worth $400 million, she was dating a billionaire. As women make more money, they want men who make even more money than them. The answer is about 1.6 to 1. So if a woman makes $100,000 a year on average, when they're surveyed, they want men who make about $160,000 a year. And even in egalitarian nations where women make more money than men, like you said, it's baked into their DNA. You are correct. This is an entomology. This is an instinct for women to be with men who are bigger, stronger, and make more money than them. And that is the case. But the problem is, Cynthia, and you can read, there's a 2016 essay by Dr. David Buss, which goes over this, is that as women make more money, and 60% of college enrollees right now are women, and about 68% of the graduates are women. If you go look at it, in those situations, those women are continuing to make more and more money. And the men that they have to choose from when they look across or up is a smaller and smaller group of men. And then you hear women complaining more and more. But the problem is, if you're one of these men who makes $250,000 a year and you're 6 feet tall, you have hundreds of women to choose from. And so now the women come to you, they want to date you, and they're frustrated because you don't want traditional monogamy, or because, like you said before, these men are cheating or whatever. That's why you need to separate the two different types of men, Cynthia. They're the men who do not have access to any women whatsoever, and then the top 50%.
What are the statistics of them cheating?
Right. So, and this is something that when you talk to women about this, this lady right here, the Cynthia lady, her reaction is the same reaction that I get when I'm just talking to people when I'm in Miami or here in Tampa, or if I'm in Atlanta or New York or LA. I get the same reaction. And it's like, hey, I'm not talking about you now. Just think about it. And they start thinking about it, right? This is why I say in America, the family court system is going to change with respect to child support. Why? Dudes are walking away. They're not working. They're giving up. And women are out earning dudes, the ones who are out here trying to work. So you're going to have some women who are like, oh, I just love him. He's my high school sweetheart, this, that, and the third. They have a kid. He's like at home taking care of the kid while she's at work. Why? Because that saves thousands and thousands of that literally saves tens of thousands of dollars a year, because you don't have to pay for childcare. He's going to take care of that. So when the divorce comes, guess what? If he's in the house, he's going to get to keep the house. He's been raising the kids. He's going to get to keep the kids. And the woman who's out here making $150,000, $200,000 a year, whatever she's making, she's going to have to pay child support and alimony in most states. So I think that is why the family law system is going to change, and it's going to change sooner than later.
So high. So you're saying that,
Well,
but I know
absolutely. Let's go to the
thousands of women
statistics
in my lifetime, and thousands upon thousands of women in my lifetime were married to men who were not 6 feet tall, who didn't make $200,000 a year.
Absolutely.
And
So
they
what
worked
you're
their
talking about-
asses off to make those relationships work.
Got it,
And then
Cynthia.
they oftentimes ended
Got it,
for
Cynthia.
several reasons, but those are some of them.
Okay, so Cynthia, you misunderstood what I said. I didn't say that they got the guys that were 6 feet tall and made $100,000 a year, because to your point, you're exactly right. It's only 2.3%.
Not enough of them.
What happens though is, because they end up with a guy who makes $70,000 a year and 5'9", they feel like they settled, but they didn't. If you were to look across the stratification, what's called assortative mating, they were a 6 and they ended up with a guy who was a 6. But because of the attention they got from men, they believed they were an 8 and were dating a guy who's a 5, and that wasn't actually what was going on. They were delusional into the ability of what they thought they could get, and because they kept trying to get that man who was at the top, and because they feel like they settled for the guy who was under 6 feet tall and did make $200,000 a year, then they had a higher proclivity to file for divorce. And that's essentially what's going on, because our Homo sapien brains were not designed to go on social media and see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of images of people who look better than us, who are wealthier than us. And because of that, there's studies that show for both sexes, for men, as they watch pornography, they start to find their wives to be less attractive. And as women,
they start
see men who
start getting really attracted to really, really young people, because that's how our society's built. It's built to train.
Well, society's built in every society throughout history.
No, I'm referring to the porn. I'm referring to the like the fact that women over time have been like stripping women of body hair, wanting them to lose a lot of weight.
I understand what you're saying.
About,
but there's no stripping of body hair like Yamamamo Indians in Venezuela. In every single society, in 1989, Dr. Buss does a 37 culture study, and he goes over every society. And in every single society, as men gain in socioeconomic class, the difference in age between them and their wives increases. Men wanting younger women is not a function of normal. One more time,
more
Cynthia.
to do with their
One more time.
I mean, just watching porn growing up, I'm just going to tell you, the body hair thing happened recently, and it was a direct result of 17. I'm just 17.
Beautiful. I understand your anecdotal evidence. This is really not up for debate anymore. There's been several studies that go over this. These are Yanomamo Indians in Venezuela who do not have access to porn. They do not. The Inuit Indians do not have access to porn. In every single one of these societies, Aboriginal men in Central Australia who do not have access to porn or the internet, in every single one of these societies, the men who, when they grew in socioeconomic status, in every single one of these societies, they chose younger and younger wives.
And these were patriarchal societies,
but
right?
there's no, but hold on, there is no other, what you're talking about before, the society where the foraging and the majority of hunting and the majority of fortification is built by women doesn't exist. There is no other society. If you're referring to it from that standpoint, yes.
Yeah, when men are in control, they want to, their proclivities come out.
Pre-plasticine, pre-agricultural revolution, there's no such thing as a non-patriarchal society. In every one of the societies, all the men were in control. But here's the problem, Cynthia, if I'm a man and I was a young 20-year-old guy observing other people, women that were not interested in me because I was not of a high status, and whenever I saw that, the things that I saw rewarded by women with sex were being assertive, being aggressive, and being more dominant. And so that caused me to want to do those things. So if you have a problem with the factors of a patriarchy, then women should stop having sex with men who are so assertive and dominant.
They have. I hate to tell you, but have you seen?
So you guys can kind of see how this conversation went, right? And this is really like, this was like the first third of their conversation. This was early on. The tone pretty much stays here. She goes off on tangents, and Brother Mike doesn't follow her. He brings her back. This thing's like, well, because of adult content, this is why things are, this is why men want younger women. Nah, men have always wanted younger, more fertile women. And when you got the science to back it up, like you go out here to these societies, and these societies who like have no technology, they don't have access to the internet. They are basically still living the same way they was living thousands of years ago, right? No real contact with the outside world. This is what they found. They found it in all sorts of spots all over the globe, in these places where they can find these people who are isolated like this, right? So it has nothing to do with what's going on today. But she wanted to say, nope, it's because of technology and adult film and the patriarchy. Just wait until we break this whole thing down. I can't wait for tomorrow. But we're definitely going to talk about this tomorrow. And as I sit here, it's technically tomorrow. It's 1:50 a.m. So, well, you know what? It will actually be, it'll probably be around this time tomorrow. So it'll probably be around 1 a.m. Sunday morning, right? Because right now it's Saturday morning, real early. I don't normally, do stuff this late, but I'm doing it right now. It is what it is. So, that's just a little taste of what we're going to be breaking down. They never got into a screaming match or anything like that. And actually, you guys will see that Michael Sartain was able to bring her to her senses and let her feelings go and trust in the science, which I thought was amazing, because you'll see it. Like she it is just amazing. Just can't wait to do it so you guys can see it. Shout out to Brother Michael Sartain. Shout out to Cynthia Elliott. And shout out to you guys. So I'm DL Saint. This is DL Shorts, man. Check me out on my YouTube channel, DL Saint. I Really Want to Know podcast. Don't be afraid to like, subscribe, and share. I look forward to reading your comments on this one. And then again, we'll do the live, or we'll have we'll get the chat involved. That's going to be a lively conversation. I'm here to tell you. I might even be a little lit on that one. I might come. This will be after I go out and socialize and network, and this will be at the end of the night, early in the morning. We're going to break this one down. I appreciate you. I'm DL Saint. I'll talk to you later. Peace.